Hello everyone. It's definitely been a month for missing children's cases as they continue to pop up over and over again in the news. And today's case is sadly one of the many. 3-year-old Elijah Vue was last seen around 8 a.m. on February 20th, 2024, just over a week ago as I'm filming this video. And he was last seen in the 3900 block of Michicot Road in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, a town an hour and a half away from Milwaukee. However, he wouldn't be reported missing until 10:59 a.m., nearly 3 hours after he was last seen. And he was actually reported missing by Elijah's mother's boyfriend, 39-year-old Jesse Vang. But here's the thing, Elijah didn't live in Two Rivers. He actually lived 150 miles away in Wisconsin Dells. So why was this 3-year-old 2.5 hours away from his home when he went missing? Well, according to authorities, Elijah had been sent to Jesse's home from February 12th to 20th by his mother, 31-year-old Katrina Bauer. And he was sent there to stay there for disciplinary reasons due to his bad behavior. But it gets worse. She wanted Jesse to teach him how to be a man. But, she gave him some guidelines of the limits to his punishments. Keep in mind, we're talking about a 3-year-old here. And let me give you some examples of the discipline that they enforced on this 3-year-old. One of the methods of discipline that they like to use was having him stand in a corner for 1 to 3 hours while he was forced to pray or say, "I'm sorry, mommy," over and over again. He was sent to Jesse's home because Jesse's home was the punishment, and going home seemed to be the privilege. Now, Elijah was also mainly bottle fed, it seems, and he also wasn't potty trained according to Jesse. Jesse said he would also only change Elijah's diaper about 1 time a day, which is not normal whatsoever, and that could lead to a countless amount of issues if a child is left in, a soiled diaper. We've seen the consequences of that before, many videos I've covered. And I'm also not a nutritionist, but should a 3-year-old not be eating solid foods? I don't think the main source of sustenance for a 3-year-old should be a bottle. However, let me know down in the comments people that are more experienced with toddlers. But there's unfortunately more, because Jesse would also tell police that Elijah was not allowed to play with the one toy that he brought with him because he was in timeout, and he seemed to be in timeout for the entire week or so that he was with Jesse. Some point in the days leading up to Elijah's disappearance, Katrina would tell police that Jesse had contacted her angry that Elijah had overfilled his diaper. So he ended up punishing Elijah by giving him a cold shower. And this cold shower always seemed to be something that Jesse would threaten Elijah with, whether that be as a punishment or an extended punishment if Elijah failed to follow the previous punishment. An example being if he was standing, staring at the wall for 2 hours and, his legs got tired and he decided to sit down or fall asleep. He then would be threatened with a cold shower, or the cold shower would be administered. Again, Jesse was angry that a 3-year-old had pooped and peed in their diaper, so he gave him a cold shower. Forcing a toddler to stand and stare at a wall or stand in one spot for multiple hours at a time. I'm not a parent yet, but I have babysat before. I do have multiple younger siblings. And when you're punishing a child, especially that young of age, you can make them go sit in a corner or go sit on a stool or somewhere as a punishment for maybe 5 minutes. But for extended periods of time like that, hours upon hours to weeks at a time, isn't going to teach a child a lesson. That is torture at that point, in my opinion. And what could a 3-year-old do that would cause someone to get so angry that they do that? Again, as we just seen, he simply soiled himself, which is just a normally bodily function, and he was punished for that. It's honestly horrific. And I really, really believe that some people just shouldn't have children, especially if they expect them to act like grown adults when they come out of the womb. It's jaw-dropping. Like, this poor baby. Well, let's talk about the night before Elijah disappeared, because Jesse allegedly drank 3 bottles of beer that night and then took a muscle relaxer before setting up to watch a movie. Now, Elijah was, of course, not allowed to watch this movie. He was put in punishment and he was forced to stand somewhere. And it seems he was forced to stand somewhere that evening for around 2 to 3 hours. After this, Jesse ended up going to sleep. Now, the next morning, Jesse says he woke up. He ended up taking his teenage son to the bus stop to go to school, which means that there was more than one child in this home. And once Jesse returned home, he claimed he gave Elijah some cereal to eat, but no milk for the cereal, just dry cereal. He also says that he did not change his diaper. He hadn't changed his diaper since the day before. And then he says that he forced Elijah to stand and pray at the foot of his bed. Now, during this period of time, it seems like Jesse decided to take a nap. He says he went and he locked the door. He locked the lock on the doorknob as well as a chain lock on the door. However, he claims when he woke up, Elijah was nowhere to be found. And that begs the question, how could this young 3-year-old undo locks on the door? You think you would find signs like maybe a chair or a stool being pushed over, and that would have been reported, and that seems not to be the case. So then, of course, Jesse calls police because Elijah vanished. Now, immediately after Elijah was reported missing, an Amber Alert went out, describing Elijah as around 3 foot tall, having dark blonde hair, brown eyes, a birthmark on his left knee, and being of Mon and white ethnicity. At the time of his disappearance, Elijah was said to be wearing gray sweatpants, a dark-colored long-sleeve shirt, and red and green dinosaur slip-on shoes. Now, this case gets dicey very quickly because very soon after Elijah's disappearance, Jesse ends up being arrested and charged with child neglect, and he's currently being held on a $20,000 cash bail. But this allegedly isn't Jesse's first run-in with the law. In 2017, Jesse was federally convicted of conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine and spent about 6 years in prison. On top of that, he has previous DUI charges, felony bail jumping for aggravated battery, disorderly conduct, drug charges, and also a child abuse charge that dates back to 2002. Yet again, a perfect example of who you should allow to babysit your children. The very next day, Elijah's mother, Katrina, would also be arrested, and she would be charged with party to a crime, child neglect, and she's currently being held on a $15,000 cash bail. I also heard she went on to change her story about her whereabouts as well as Elijah's whereabouts multiple times, which ended up leading to her being charged with obstruction of justice on February 26th. During Monday's hearing, Elijah's uncle addressed the court and said the family asked both Bauer and Vang to be held, and I quote, fully accountable for their actions or lack thereof. After reading just a few things from the criminal complaint, these two individuals should not be allowed to walk freely amongst us until we find where Elijah is, end quote. And I agree. But let's get into a little backstory of Elijah's life and his family. So as far as I've seen, Elijah's father's name is Jimmy, and he's in prison, and he has multiple charges as well. But one count of physically harming a child is one that really stuck out to me. And Katrina's social media has really been a big thing talked about in this case. On TikTok, she ended up posting about DV that she experienced with allegedly Jimmy, posting photos of bruises and injuries that she sustained. So it seems like she does have a traumatic past as well. It turns out that Elijah also has an older sister named Elena who's around 6 or 7 years old, and she has autism. However, from Katrina's own posts, after Jimmy went to jail due to this violence, she ended up becoming homeless and she lost custody of both of the children. And as far as I've seen, this happened somewhere in April of 2021. However, just a year later, in April of 2022, Katrina ended up gaining custody again of the children. And, during that last 2 years, Katrina's social media really kind of gives you whiplash because it seems like she was a genuinely caring mother from her social media who went through a DV situation. She finally got her kids back, and she was coming out better on the other side. She went on to mommy groups asking for help with Elena, such as this post from December of 2021, where she says, and I quote, I need help. My 4-year-old daughter is currently in foster care due to her father being violent. When I left, I lost my home and they took my children. I have 2, but my 4-year-old is autistic. When she is angry, she has violent episodes. Gentle parenting works. However, the social workers are claiming I give her control, which is not the case, but they keep insisting I give her timeouts, which will not work for her. Please, I need advice on how to handle these episodes because I've met all of the conditions to getting her back, but now they're making it harder for me by saying I need to show her who's in charge. Please help. End quote. And what would Katrina later go on to do? Try to show Elijah who's in charge. In September of 2023, Katrina would post about how much Elijah's smile made her happy. In December again, she would post about how much she loved Elijah and how happy he made her. So many happy posts about a child she would later go on to punish so severely. Now, to dispute this, neighbors have slowly been coming out of the woodworks, also claiming that they would often hear Katrina yelling at the children. And if that is true, it does remind me a lot of the Jalea Easton case, where Jalea's mother would post almost these posed photos of her children and brag about how happy they looked and how nice their clothes were. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, she was severely beating her children and neglecting them to the point where Jalea ended up dying. But what this does mean now is that basically everyone is in jail. The mom, the boyfriend, the father's in jail. So now police are left trying to figure out what happened to this sweet little boy. And they've come out in droves. There's multiple police forces working on this. The FBI is involved. Dive teams would comb the waterways and landfills would be searched in the local area. Local volunteers, including the Vue family themselves, have come out. And they've also said that they haven't seen Elijah since he was a baby, but they've very much so been helpful trying to find Elijah.
Do police believe Elijah left that residence on his own?
Again, I can't speculate. I will say that, again, when we're talking about the Amber Alert that we put out, people wanted me to speculate on an abduction versus endangered. At this point, what I do know is a child was missing in cold temperatures, winter temperatures, in relatively little clothing and possibly a blanket. That's what we're searching for, and we'll continue to search for until I get some answers.
To anyone who may have information about Elijah's whereabouts, we plead with you to please come forward. Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to speak up may hold the key to Elijah's safe return.
Now, The biggest piece of evidence that has come out so far is that a shoe matching the description of Elijah's shoe would end up being found in a dumpster. There hasn't been much information about the shoe. However, it does match the description. It looks to have the colorful dinosaurs on it, and it looks to be a slip-on shoe, which doesn't give good hope for what may have happened to Elijah if his shoe was found in a dumpster. If it is his shoe, of course, which may be why they're searching the local landfills. However, if he is deceased, his body has not been recovered yet. Now, as of right now, there is currently a $15,000 reward for information that leads to Elijah coming home. As I always say, if you know something, say something. There's a little boy who's currently missing. It's freezing cold outside, so where is he? So my thoughts on this case. What I really wonder is if police have interviewed Jesse's teenage son, and if they had, what has he had to say about what happened that morning? Was Elijah even there that morning? That means something must have happened to him in this short period of time between, the teenage son leaving for school and then Jesse calling the police about 3 hours later. Maybe the punishments just went too far and Elijah ended up dying. Maybe Jesse snapped because Elijah soiled his diaper again. And if something like that did happen to Elijah, that means that Jesse only had a very short amount of time then to get rid of his body. Or was he not even there that morning? Did the teenage son not see him at all? Those are all questions that I have, which means that maybe something happened even prior to that and he had an even greater amount of time to do something. In my opinion, Elijah didn't just wander out of the house, especially if Jesse latched the chains and stuff on the door like he claims he did. On top of that, Jesse talked a lot about how Elijah was terrified of cold water. And I'm sure from the punishments that were inflicted upon this little boy, he was terrified to even move a foot. This little boy was beaten down so badly mentally, if not physically as well, that I'm sure he was terrified to move from the spot he was placed in when he was punished. So if Jesse did make him stand at the end of the bed while he took this nap, I can't see this little 3-year-old running away, going and unlatching a door and running off. And then on top of that, you have to consider what are the chances then that he did leave the home and then he was met by other foul play. That's an even smaller percentage. It's not impossible, of course. It does happen, but the chances of him getting out of the house without there any evidence of him getting out of the house, because you think if the door was left open or there was a chair near the door so he could unlock it, that they would have said that information. Again, it still could have happened and the police are just keeping that hush for some reason, but you think they would have said that and then he would have had to meet foul play outside somewhere. In my opinion, that's too many extra circumstances to happen. Of course, anything is possible though. But then I have questions about Katrina. What made her go from wanting to get her kids back so badly, being this great mother, quote unquote great mother, and then sending her 3-year-old to live with a complete stranger pretty much to him, to be severely punished for weeks on end? It's horrifying. What anyone would think to do that. Then again, we do have the Audrey Cunningham case where, a literal PDF file was allowed to live in the home and babysitter. So I don't know what parents are thinking these days, honestly. But the fact that this continues to happen over and over and over again, it's exhausting, honestly. To think that Elijah may just be another statistic to a never-ending list of children's names who are neglected by their parents or their caregivers, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to think that there are hundreds of more of these children out there right this very moment. Every time I do one of these videos, you think, this is out of the norm, right? This doesn't happen often. Yet it seems we hear about these cases multiple times a month at this point now. So there could be hundreds of children out there this very instant who are being abused and neglected by their own loved ones. And we don't even know. You would never know. It could be your neighbor down the street. It could be your friend's friend, for all you know. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It's heartbreaking. And that's why obviously if you see something, say something. If you know something, say something. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes they present on social media and to friends and family as, happy, loving. And then this is what's happening behind closed doors. Just some people should not have children. That's the bottom line. But that's just my opinion. But what I do want to know is what you all think about this case. Is there any information that I didn't include in this video that you know about? Let's chat about it down below. And of course, I will try to keep you updated as information comes out. Again, if you have any tips, all of the information down in the description to contact authorities. As always, I hope you all stay safe out there. Lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.